Right now, somewhere near you, someone is yawning. Maybe it's you. Your mouth stretches open. Your eyes water. Your jaw cracks just slightly. You barely notice it happening. You assume it means you're tired. But the real answer is far stranger. Your yawn is not about sleep at all. It's a 400-million-year-old survival reflex, and it's still running in the background of your brain, doing a job you've never once thought about. Think about the last time you yawned. Were you actually tired or were you bored? Sitting in a meeting. Watching someone else yawn. Scrolling your phone at 2 p.m. with a full night's sleep behind you. The timing doesn't add up. If yawning were purely about exhaustion, none of that would make sense. So what is it really doing? Here's a strange fact to sit with first. You started yawning before you were even born. Ultrasound studies show fetuses yawning in the womb as early as 11 weeks into pregnancy. 11 weeks. Long before there's any concept of boredom. Long before there's a single night of poor sleep to recover from. Whatever yawning is for, your body was already doing it before it had lungs that had ever drawn breath. Scientists have been asking this question for over a century, and the answer keeps changing. For decades, the leading idea was simple. You yawn because your brain needs oxygen. Carbon dioxide builds up, you take a big gulping breath, problem solved. It's a tidy story. It's also wrong. The oxygen theory had been around since the early 1900s, repeated so often in textbooks and casual conversation that almost nobody thought to test it properly. It felt obvious. A yawn looks like a big breath, so it must be about breathing. That's the kind of explanation that survives for decades simply because it sounds reasonable, not because anyone confirmed it. In 1987, a researcher named Robert Provini ran an experiment that should have ended that theory for good. He had people breathe air with extra oxygen. Then he had them breathe air with extra carbon dioxide. If the oxygen theory were true, the high carbon dioxide air should have triggered way more yawning. It didn't. Yawn rates barely moved. Something else was going on entirely. So Provini looked elsewhere. And what he found connects your yawn to something far older than breathing chemistry. It connects to temperature. Your brain is an incredibly expensive organ to run. It uses about 20% of your body's energy despite being a fraction of your body's weight. And like a laptop pushed too hard, it heats up. Andrew Gallup, a researcher who spent years studying this, proposed what's now called the thermoregulatory theory of yawning. The idea is simple once you hear it. Yawning is a built-in cooling system. When you yawn, you take a deep breath of cooler air. Your jaw stretches wide, increasing blood flow to your face and skull. That stretch pulls cooler blood up toward your brain and pushes warmer blood away. It's a radiator, hidden inside a reflex you assumed was about boredom. Gallup tested this directly. He had participants hold either a warm pack or a cold pack against their forehead. People holding the warm pack yawned far more often. People holding the cold pack yawned almost not at all. Their brains, quite literally, were adjusting their own temperature, and the yawn was the tool they were using to do it. This explains something that never made sense before. Why do you yawn more in the morning, right after waking up, when your brain is naturally warmer from sleep? Why do you yawn before going to sleep, as your internal temperature is shifting again? Why do people yawn less in extremely cold environments, where the outside air is already doing the cooling for them? Every one of those patterns lines up with the brain trying to regulate its own heat. Gallup didn't stop at one experiment. In a follow-up study, he sent researchers out into the world with clipboards, stopping pedestrians on sidewalks during winter and summer months and simply asking them to look at a series of images of people yawning, then recording whether they caught the yawn themselves. In winter, when the air was cold and the brain's cooling system had less work to do, contagious yawning dropped sharply. In summer, when ambient heat made natural cooling harder, it rose again. Outdoor temperature, recorded in real time, on real sidewalks, was quietly steering one of the most automatic behaviors your body performs. But here's where it gets stranger. You already knew about the boredom yawn, and the sleepy yawn. What you probably didn't know is the most unsettling kind. The contagious yawn. You've felt it? Someone yawns near you, and within seconds, you're yawning too. You can't stop it. You can't will it away. Even reading about yawning right now might be making you want to yawn. That's not a coincidence. That's your brain hijacking ancient social wiring. Contagious yawning isn't unique to humans. Chimpanzees catch yawns from each other. So do baboons. So, remarkably, do dogs, who will yawn after watching their own human yawn. Researchers studying this behavior have found a clear pattern. The closer your social bond to the yawner, the more likely you are to catch it. Family members trigger it most. Close friends, almost as much. Strangers, far less. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Contagious yawning appears to be wired into the same brain regions involved in empathy. Atsushi Senju, a researcher who studies social cognition, found that children with autism, who often process social signals differently, are significantly less likely to catch a yawn from someone else. The yawn isn't just cooling your brain. It might be quietly measuring how socially connected you are to the person next to you. It gets even more specific than that. Brain imaging studies have shown that watching someone yawn activates the same regions involved in mirror neuron activity, the same circuitry that lights up when you wince at someone else's pain, or smile because someone smiled at you first. Catching a yawn may not be a separate process from empathy. It may be one of the rawest, most automatic expressions of it, a piece of social wiring so old it doesn't even bother rooting through conscious thought. Now picture this playing out tens of thousands of years ago. Not in an office. Not on a couch. In a small group of early humans, sitting around a fire as the light faded, exhausted from a day of walking and hunting and watching for danger. One person yawns. It ripples through the group. Within a minute, almost everyone is yawning. To you, that looks like nothing. To your ancestors, that ripple may have been doing something critical. Some researchers believe contagious yawning evolved as a synchronizing signal, a way for an entire group to silently agree it was time to lower alertness together, to rest at the same moment, to stay coordinated as a unit rather than leaving some members awake and vulnerable while others slept. A yawn spreading through camp wasn't politeness. It may have been survival, written into a gesture so small nobody had to think about it. Some primatologists studying wolves and lions have found a related pattern. In coordinated predators, a yawn moving through the pack right before a hunt seems to align the group's arousal levels, readying everyone for the same burst of action at roughly the same moment. The yawn, in other words, isn't always about winding down. Sometimes it's about winding everyone up together, all at once, as a unit rather than as scattered individuals. There's an even older piece to this story. Yawning shows up across an enormous range of species, not just primates. Snakes yawn. Fish yawn. Birds yawn. Even some reptiles yawn while still inside the egg, stretching their jaw before they've ever taken a breath of outside air. That tells you something important. This behavior didn't start with humans. It didn't start with mammals. It's older than warm blood itself. Which means every time you yawn at your desk, you're triggering a circuit that predates trees, predates flowers, predates almost every land animal you can picture. Your brain didn't invent this. It inherited it, mostly unchanged, from a lineage stretching back hundreds of millions of years, because whatever this reflex was doing, it worked well enough to survive every mass extinction, every climate shift, every evolutionary pressure since. So why does it still happen to you, dozens of times a day, in moments that have nothing to do with predators or fire circles because your brain doesn't know the difference between ancient danger and modern fatigue? It only knows temperature, and arousal, and social signals, the same three triggers it's been reading for millions of years. A boring meeting raises none of the stakes your ancestors faced, but your brain still registers the dip in alertness the same way it always has, and reaches for the same old tool to manage it. This is also why you yawn more in certain seasons than others. Gallup's later research found that yawning frequency tends to drop in extreme heat, above roughly body temperature, because at that point, taking in warm outside air does nothing to cool the brain down. The reflex, in other words, knows its own limits. It only fires when it can actually do its job. That's not boredom. That's a finely tuned biological thermostat, refined over millions of years of trial and error, still running quietly underneath every yawn you've ever had. There's one more layer worth sitting with. Researchers have noticed that excessive yawning, far beyond the normal daily range, can sometimes be an early signal of the brain working overtime to regulate its own temperature or arousal under stress, fatigue, or in rarer cases, underlying neurological conditions. Your yawn isn't just a reflex. For some people, it's quietly reporting on the state of the brain itself, long before anything else does. Think about that the next time you feel one coming on. It's not your body announcing that it's bored, or rude, or tired of you. It's a 400-million-year-old cooling system kicking in, wired through some of the oldest social circuitry your brain has, still scanning the people around you for connection, still trying to keep your mind running at the right temperature, exactly the way it did for the first creature that ever opened its jaw and stretched. And maybe that reframes something else too. Every time you felt embarrassed for yawning in a meeting, or apologized for it like it was rude, you were apologizing for one of the oldest, most involuntary acts your body performs. You weren't being rude. You weren't even really being tired, not in the way you assumed. You were doing something your ancestors did around fires, something wolves do before a hunt, something a fetus does before it has ever breathed open air. There's nothing to apologize for. There's only an ancient signal, still firing exactly on schedule. So tonight, when the day is winding down, and the people around you start yawning, one after another, watch it happen. That ripple moving silently through the room isn't boredom. It's not even really about you. It's hundreds of millions of years of evolution, still quietly working, still doing its job, every single time your mouth opens without you asking it to.
Thank you guys for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe for more such amazing content.